Hey, Will, question for you. Have you ever heard this term multi-threading?
Should I tell you the context I have heard it from?
Yes, sir.
So within CPUs, computer processors, they talk about multi-threading all the time. You have a memory, it'd be like an L1, L2 cache that holds data, then it goes into multiple threads, and it can be simultaneously processed, and it spits out data at the other end. Some processing is great for it. Some processing, like video rendering, is terrible for it because you've got to do one frame at a time in a video render, so you can't parallel process or multi-process them. But I don't know about it in the context of sales, Victor. So enlighten
Yeah.
me and the audience.
I knew the tech one. I also knew the when you have multi-threads within a chat room.
Sure.
That was the other threading I got. Well, I was listening to an interview. It was a random interview I was watching, and the young guy says, "Hey, what I use is a multi-threading approach." I go, "Multi-thread? What the heck is that?" So, I had to look it up. Multi-threaded sales are deals where your sales team has connected with multiple decision makers on the purchasing side. And I'm like, okay, so it's really the same thing we've always known that you don't want to bank on one person. You really want to connect with a lot of different people within an organization, and that as opposed to a single-threaded sales relationship, which only lasts as long as your champion remains at the company. In this latest research, management strategist Dr. John Sullivan reveals that 70% of people quit their jobs within 2 years. That number right there is kind of shocking. I mean, millennials, what are you doing to the market right now? And then these two data points. Since 32% of employers now expect job jumping, sales reps and teams should follow suit and plan accordingly, preparing for the effects of turnover at a client company. Last bullet point, and I'll try to tie this all together. In the 2018 Bridge Report, it shows that the average tenure for sales rep is 1.5 years. That number was a little bit shocking, but says what made it worse was not bad until you consider it takes an average of 3 to 5 months to ramp up the productivity. Now, there's two ways of looking at this, and I thought this multi-threading thing, I mean, obviously multi-threading means is you don't want to bank on the champion, you want to have multiple points, multiple hooks inside a company. But the point is more relevant today because not only are you sales reps jumping ship from their own company, I guess employees within the company you're targeting are also jumping ship. So this is like it's really dynamic. And I just thought it was an interesting phrase that we'd bring to the forefront here on This Week in Sales.
I've got two thoughts on this. One, and I'll give you to them both in case there's one that's more interesting to chat about than the other.
Yeah.
One, this tells me that building your personal brand is more important than ever before. Because if I work with Sally at company A, we do a deal, and she loves working with me personally. It doesn't matter about the product or service. I've added so much value with via the cliches of consulting and all this good stuff that we talk about with the complex B2B sale all the time. And then she moves to company B, she might buy from me again. And then if I move, which what I did, move from one medical device company to their biggest competitor, I took a load of business over with me as well. So I was basically headhunted from one organization to another and it got a massive bonus, the sales team didn't realize it at the time, my colleagues, but I got a kind of some, what's the opposite of golden handcuffs? I got like a bonus for coming to the company kind of thing. No, yeah.
Lead handcuffs.
No, as in I wasn't. Golden handcuffs is when you've been with an organization so long that it doesn't make sense to leave, right?
Right.
I had the opposite of that at the beginning of the role. So your personal brand is that strong. If you can generate leads based on the fact that your LinkedIn profile ranks number one when an organization searches for medical device salesperson, endoscopic camera salesperson, whatever it is, you've just got massive control over you're almost unsackable. So I think that's really empowering for salespeople rather than disempowering for them. I think if people are chopping and changing jobs all the time, I think it's a good place for salespeople to be selling into, as opposed to it's becoming more difficult for them. So that's number one. Point number two, I thought you were going to go down the route of having two salespeople sell into the same account. So multi-threading from the perspective of we've got Sally and Barry both selling into this enterprise account. Some customers or some individuals in the account are going to have more of an affinity for Barry. Some are going to have more of an affinity to Sally. Perhaps Sally is young and Barry's more tenured and perhaps older or has more experience. One is perhaps more of a product specialist and the other one is more of a deal maker. I thought that would be the route that they were going to talk about in this article of multi-threading with kind of doubling down on large enterprise accounts, as opposed to it talked about basically the obvious, isn't it, of get in front of more people and you're more likely to close deals.
I think you came up with a new phrase, Will. Congratulations. I think we're going to call it dual multi-threading. That's when two people work through an organization, connect with different points. So that's it. This Week in Sales has just invented a new phrase, dual multi-threading. We'll take credit for that, Will.
Yeah, because that is something that might separate an organization in the marketplace, right? Because nobody does that. Very well. Maybe there's siloed sales teams with. So my last sales job, we had a trainee with us, and then he had a product specialist who kind of went across multiple silos, and then I had a logistics guy. I've not thought about. I won't name him because he might listen to this. But our logistics guy, he was an absolute legend. I've forgotten about him until just that moment in time. A slightly older guy running around delivering these camera systems to theaters and just doing dressed far better than what I did. Everyone thought he was the salesperson, not me. I'd rock in looking like a scruff after the fact, and everyone would be like, why are you here? Anyway, we'll cover that another time. But it would be interesting to see. I feel like that'd be an interesting experiment if you are selling into the enterprise, of having two sales professionals go in there as opposed to just the one.
I think it happens today with like collaborative selling. So you may see that in certain organizations, but I don't know if it's a standard though.